story, hell. In the farthest reaches of human imagination, there exists a place where light is swallowed by eternal darkness, a realm both physical and metaphysical, where torment and revelation coexist in an endless dance. This is hell, not merely a fiery abyss, but a living testament to the consequences of sin, regret, and the haunting echoes of the past. Our journey begins with Elias, a man burdened by secrets and an unquenchable thirst for redemption. Haunted by memories that refuse to fade, Elias carries within him the weight of every misdeed, every loss, and every moment of despair. In his quiet moments, he hears whispers of a destiny that calls him toward a descent into the unknown, a call that promises both damnation and the possibility of salvation. As the boundaries between the tangible world and the realm of nightmares blur, Elias finds himself standing on the precipice of an infernal chasm. Before him lies a labyrinth of suffering and mystery, a place where every shadow hides a tortured soul, and every step forward is a step deeper into despair. Here in the oppressive heat and suffocating darkness, the past and present merge, forcing him to confront the demons that have long lurked in the recesses of his heart. What awaits beyond this threshold is uncertain. A series of trials that will test the very fabric of his being, challenge his beliefs, and ultimately reveal the true nature of hell. It is a journey that will lead him to question the price of sin, the possibility of redemption, and the cost of defying fate. With each passing moment, the infernal landscape beckons, promising that every choice made within its depths will shape not only his destiny, but the eternal balance between light and darkness. Prepare yourself, for the path ahead is fraught with torment and revelation. Welcome to hell. Descent into the abyss. Elias had always felt that something was missing in his life, a quiet emptiness that no amount of routine or distraction could fill. In the dim light of early morning, as he prepared for another monotonous day in the city, a subtle sense of foreboding lurked behind the familiar. He lived in an aging apartment building on the edge of town, where the concrete walls whispered secrets of past lives and silent tragedies. For years, Elias had tried to ignore the creeping dread, chalking it up to the weariness of an unremarkable existence. But on this particular day, as the gray skies wept over the city, he felt as though an invisible force was drawing him toward an inevitable confrontation with his own inner darkness. Elias's routine was simple: wake, dress, commute, work, and return home to solitude. Yet, even in the mundane rhythm of his day, peculiar details began to disrupt his perception. At the bus stop, he noticed a stray black cat watching him intently, its eyes glinting with an intelligence that seemed almost supernatural. At work, the clock's ticking was unusually loud, as if each second was a step closer to some unknown reckoning. Even the reflection in his coffee mug seemed distorted, as though the liquid surface concealed more than just his tired face. That evening, as Elias trudged up the narrow staircase to his apartment, the sense of foreboding deepened. The building's corridors were dimly lit, and shadows danced in the corners, merging with memories of whispered legends about the place. Some said the building was built on cursed ground. Others claimed that long ago it had been the site of unspeakable rituals. Elias, though skeptical, couldn't shake the feeling that tonight would be different. Entering his apartment, Elias was greeted by the familiar scent of old paper and stale air. He flicked on the lamp and sank into his worn armchair. A book lay open on the coffee table, a collection of forgotten folklore and urban legends. He'd been reading about the concept of hell as more than just a realm of eternal punishment, but as a living, breathing space that manifested in the hearts of those who dared confront their own sins and regrets. The idea fascinated him, resonating with the hidden emptiness he had long felt. Perhaps there was truth in the notion that hell was not merely a distant myth, but something that existed within the shadows of our everyday lives. As midnight approached, a sudden power outage plunged the building into darkness. Elias' heart skipped a beat as he fumbled for his phone to use its flashlight. The sudden loss of electricity was unusual for the old building, and for a moment, he could almost hear the hum of something stirring in the dark. In that silence, the usual city noises, the distant rumble of traffic, the soft murmur of life seemed to vanish, leaving only the oppressive weight of an unseen presence. Determined not to let his imagination run wild, Elias settled back into his chair and began to reread a chapter on ancient rites. However, before he could immerse himself again, a low, almost imperceptible sound caught his attention. It was a whisper, soft and elusive, as if carried on a breeze from a place far away. He strained his ears but could not make out the words. The whisper repeated, growing slightly louder as if urging him to listen. It was a call, a beckoning that resonated deep within him. Elias felt compelled to follow it, as though his very soul was being pulled toward an unknown destination. Unable to ignore the lure any longer, Elias rose from his chair. He grabbed his jacket and stepped cautiously into the hallway. The beam from his phone's flashlight wavered across peeling wallpaper and cracked concrete, illuminating fragments of strange symbols carved into the wall marks that he had never noticed before. They looked ancient, almost ritualistic, and their presence sent a shiver racing down his spine. Could these marks be connected to the legends he had read? Or were they merely the product of an overactive imagination in an old building? Following the sound of that ghostly whisper, Elias's feet carried him toward the building's basement, a place he rarely visited. The heavy wooden door creaked open as he descended a narrow, creaking staircase. The basement was cold and damp, filled with the smell of earth and decay. Rows of old storage boxes and forgotten relics cluttered the space, their purpose long since lost to time. It was in this suffocating silence that Elias noticed a peculiar glimmer in the far corner, a small, ornate mirror that had not been there before. Its surface was flawless, almost hypnotic, and it seemed to pulse with a light of its own. As he approached, the whisper intensified, now clearly emanating from the mirror. Elias could feel his heart pounding as he reached out, his hand trembling. In the mirror's reflection, he did not see his own face. Instead, he saw a vast chasm of swirling darkness, punctuated by sparks of fiery light, a scene that resembled a realm of eternal torment. The image was horrifyingly beautiful and irresistibly magnetic. In that moment, Elias felt as though he was witnessing a window into another world, a realm that might very well be hell itself. The mirror's surface rippled like water disturbed by a stone, and with each ripple, the whisper grew louder and more insistent. Elias's rational mind warred with his growing terror. Was this some trick of the light? A hallucination born from loneliness and fatigue? Yet, deep within him, he sensed a truth that transcended logic. The mirror was a portal, a threshold to an infernal domain that had long been hidden from mortal eyes. With trembling resolve, Elias reached out and touched the mirror's cool surface. In that instant, the room around him began to dissolve. The musty basement faded into darkness, replaced by an oppressive, searing heat. He found himself standing at the edge of a vast abyss, a chasm that stretched into endless night, its depths echoing with the screams of unseen souls. The ground beneath him was a mix of scorched earth and twisted metal, remnants of a world lost to time and torment. Elias' mind reeled as he struggled to comprehend what was happening. He was no longer in the safety of his apartment or the familiar confines of the basement. He was in a place that defied all reason, a place where the very air burned with the intensity of suffering. As he stepped forward, the ground shuddered beneath him, and distant wails echoed through the darkness. Each step felt like a descent not only into a physical abyss, but into the deepest recesses of his own despair. In the distance, a faint light flickered like the last remnants of hope. Drawn to it, Elias began to move, his footsteps echoing on the barren, cracked ground. Every now and then he caught glimpses of tortured faces, shadows that moved in and out of the periphery of his vision. Their eyes pleaded for release, and their mouths moved in silent agony, as if recounting tales of unbearable torment. These were not mere phantoms. They were the lost souls of the damned, trapped in an eternal cycle of suffering. As Elias advanced, the oppressive heat gave way to an unsettling chill. The atmosphere shifted dramatically, and he could sense the presence of something ancient and malevolent lurking just beyond the edge of his perception. The whisper returned, now unmistakably clear, a single word repeated over and over, echoing in his mind, abandon. Yet somewhere within him, a stubborn spark of defiance flared. He refused to heed the command. Instead, he pressed onward, determined to uncover the secrets of this nightmarish realm. The further he ventured, the more the landscape morphed into a labyrinth of contradictions, a place where fire and ice coexisted, and where beauty and horror danced a macabre waltz. Jagged peaks of rock jutted from molten rivers, while frozen pools of water shimmered with an eerie, spectral light. In one moment, Elias found himself surrounded by a thick, choking smoke that obscured his vision. In the next, the air was crystal clear, revealing an endless plain of torment. With each step, he felt the weight of innumerable sins and regrets pressing upon him, as if the land itself was alive with the memories of those who had fallen before. At times, Elias would stop and listen. The silence was broken by distant screams, the clash of unseen forces, and the soft, almost musical lilt of demonic laughter. The cacophony was both terrifying and strangely mesmerizing, a reminder that this was a place where all things existed in a state of perpetual conflict. His heart pounded in his chest as he trudged forward, each step a battle against overwhelming despair and the pull of surrender. In a moment of rare clarity amid the chaos, Elias recalled the ancient legends of hell tales passed down in hushed whispers, recounting the descent of mortals into a realm where punishment and redemption were two sides of the same coin. He remembered reading that hell was not just the punishment for the wicked, but a place where every soul was forced to confront its innermost truths. Perhaps, Elias thought, his unexpected journey here was not merely a punishment, but also an opportunity, a chance to atone for the sins that had haunted him all his life. Yet as the landscape twisted and warped around him, any semblance of hope began to fade. The light that once flickered in the distance now revealed itself as nothing more than a cruel illusion, a mocking beacon that dissolved whenever he reached it. The whispers grew louder, more insistent, urging him to abandon his futile Yacht quest and give in to the inevitable despair. But Elias, fueled by a desperate need for answers, refused to succumb. He pressed on, feeling each moment stretch into eternity. Every step was a struggle, not just against the physical terrain, but against the overwhelming realization that he might never find a way back. His thoughts churned in his mind like a storm. Memories of past mistakes, regrets over lost opportunities, an gnawing fear that he was destined to remain trapped in this infernal prison forever. The weight of these thoughts was almost unbearable, yet they also served as a grim reminder of why he had come here in the first place, to face the darkness within himself and to seek a path toward redemption. As Elias continued his descent, the environment began to show signs of purpose, a slow, deliberate shaping that hinted at a grand design behind the chaos. Arched bridges spanned chasms filled with writhing shadows, and ancient stone pathways emerged from the rubble, their surfaces etched with cryptic symbols. It was as if the realm of hell itself was guiding him deeper into its secrets, compelling him to follow a predetermined path despite his mounting terror. Standing at the threshold of what appeared to be a massive cavern, Elias paused. The cavern's entrance was framed by colossal pillars, their surfaces covered in intricate carvings depicting scenes of punishment and sorrow. Beyond the entrance, an otherworldly glow pulsed softly, beckoning him to step inside. With a deep, shuddering breath, Elias steeled himself and crossed the threshold, leaving behind the familiar remnants of his old life for the unfathomable depths of hell. Inside the cavern, the air was thick with the scent of burning incense and decayed memories. The walls pulsed with a slow, rhythmic beat, as if the very heart of this damned realm were exposed. Elias felt both dread and an inexplicable pull, a promise of revelation hidden within the darkness. Here in the echoing vastness of the abyss, the journey into hell had truly begun. And as he took his first uncertain steps into the cavern, the distant whispers seemed to converge into one clear final message. Welcome, Elias. Your trial has only just begun. Elias's descent was not just a physical journey, it was an unyielding confrontation with his own soul. Every step forward echoed the inevitable truth that hell was not merely a destination, but a crucible in which the essence of humanity was tested. In that moment, standing at the precipice of infinite despair and reluctant hope, Elias realized that his life, with all its scars and regrets, had led him to this very point. And though the path ahead was shrouded in darkness, there was no turning back. With his resolve hardened and his heart heavy with both fear and determination, Elias moved deeper into the cavern, each echoing footstep marking the beginning of a trial that would forever alter his destiny. The abyss was calling, and he had answered. The summons. Elias stood in the vast, echoing cavern, his mind reeling from the overwhelming revelation of his new surroundings. The oppressive heat and the low, constant murmur of suffering were almost too much to bear. Yet, amid the chaos of twisted architecture and tortured whispers, something else began to stir, a voice, subtle at first, that beckoned him onward. At first, the voice was like a distant hum, barely audible beneath the cacophony of wailing souls. Elias paused at the threshold of the cavern's inner passage, his heart pounding in his chest. He strained his ears, attempting to discern the sound from the myriad noises of hell. Slowly, the murmur coalesced into a single, persistent cadence, a call that seemed both familiar and terrifying. It was a summons that transcended language, evoking feelings of both dread and longing. Elias took a hesitant step forward. Each footfall echoed off ancient stone walls, and with every step, the voice grew louder, more insistent. It was as if the very air around him carried a message meant only for him. The words were not clear, but their intent was unmistakable, a beckoning to follow, to accept the invitation that lay before him. The mysterious call resonated deep within his soul, stirring memories of a life he once knew, a life filled with missed chances and quiet regrets. The cavern twisted and narrowed as Elias advanced. Flickering light danced across walls, etched with cryptic symbols that seemed to pulse with a life of their own. In this alien landscape, time and space lost meaning, and Elias felt both infinitesimally small and strangely significant, as though fate had finally placed him at the crossroads of destiny. With every step, his internal struggle grew. Part of him wanted to turn back, to flee from the overwhelming darkness and uncertainty. But another part, the part that yearned for truth and absolution, urged him to press on. The voice, soft yet commanding, began to form words that Elias could almost understand. It spoke of redemption and damnation, of choices made in a world far removed from the one he once inhabited. As he moved deeper into the labyrinth, Elias recalled the countless nights he had spent wrestling with his own demons, mistakes that haunted him, regrets that clung like shadows. Now, standing at the precipice of an infernal realm, he realized that the summons was not merely an external call, but an internal reckoning. This voice was a manifestation of his deepest guilt and hope intertwined. Long in the gloom of a narrow passage, Elias finally saw its source, a figure, barely discernible against the backdrop of swirling darkness. The silhouette was tall and draped in a garment that seemed to absorb the meager light around it. Its features were obscured, and yet there was an undeniable presence in its posture. The figure radiated an aura of both sorrow and authority, as though it had witnessed the rise and fall of countless souls. The mysterious figure spoke, its voice resonating like a chorus of distant echoes. Elias, it intoned, each syllable imbued with a weight that made the very air tremble. You have been called here for a reason. The path before you is fraught with torment, yet it is the only way to confront the truth of your existence. Elias felt a chill that contrasted sharply with the oppressive heat of the cavern. Who are you? He asked, his voice wavering. Why do you call me? The figure hesitated, as if choosing its words with care. I am a guide for those who wander in darkness. I have seen the depths of hell and the heights of despair. You, Elias, have been summoned to face what lies buried within your soul. The sins you have carried, the pain you have hidden, and now you must atone for them. Only by walking this path can you hope to find redemption, or perhaps to understand the true nature of damnation. Elias' mind raced. The summons was not a random occurrence. It was intimately connected to the choices he had made in life. Every moment of regret, every painful memory was now converging upon him in this forsaken place. The voice and its guide represented an inescapable truth. His past was no longer something he could ignore. It was a call to face the consequences of a lifetime spent evading responsibility. The figure extended a hand, beckoning Elias forward. Come, it said softly, and listen to the lessons that hell has to teach. You have been given an opportunity, a final chance to reconcile with the darkness that you have harbored. Do not fear the journey ahead. Fear only the thought of never confronting your own truth. Elias hesitated at the boundary between his old life and this new, terrifying reality. He remembered the moments of quiet desperation in his apartment, the nights spent in solitude, the unspoken guilt that had festered within him. Now, in the midst of unimaginable horror, those memories seemed to cry out for acknowledgement. Though terror gripped him, he could not deny that this was an invitation he had been waiting for, whether he had known it or not. With a deep, shuddering breath, Elias stepped toward the guide. The air around him vibrated with the energy of countless souls lost in torment, their voices merging into a relentless symphony of sorrow and rage. Every step felt like a plunge into the deepest recesses of his own psyche, a confrontation with the parts of himself he had long tried to bury. The guide's presence was both comforting and unnerving, offering solace in the form of grim certainty. As they traversed a winding corridor within the labyrinth, the landscape shifted subtly. The walls became smoother, the oppressive architecture giving way to passages that seemed almost welcoming in their eerie calm. Here the whispers of lost souls softened, replaced by a profound silence that spoke louder than any scream. Elias felt as though he were walking through the eye of a storm, a fragile moment of respite before the inevitable chaos resumed. In the silence, the guide spoke again, its voice low and almost tender. Every soul that enters hell carries a burden. Some are weighed down by regret, others by guilt, and many by the sins of the past. But within you, Elias, there is a spark, a potential for redemption that is rare in these depths. The summons you have received is not a curse, but an invitation to discover who you truly are. It is a call to shed the masks you have worn for so long, and to embrace the painful truth of your existence. Elias listened, his heart torn between fear and a strange emerging hope. The idea that this infernal journey might lead to some form of redemption was both enticing and horrifying. The very notion seemed to suggest that even in a place as bleak as hell, there was the possibility of transformation, a chance to rise from the ashes of one's own mistakes. The corridor eventually opened into a vast chamber. The ceiling arched high above, lost in darkness, while the floor was covered in a mosaic of fractured images, each one depicting scenes of torment, sacrifice, and lost dreams. It was as if the chamber itself was a record of every soul that had ever passed through these infernal gates. Elias felt the weight of centuries bearing down on him as he gazed upon the images, each one a mirror reflecting his own inner torment. In the center of the chamber stood an ornate pedestal upon which lay a scroll sealed with a sigil that pulsed with a faint crimson glow. The guide gestured toward it. "This scroll contains the truth of your summons," it explained. "Within these ancient words are the details of your fate, the choices you must make, and the trials you must endure. Read it, and let its wisdom guide you through the darkness." With trembling hands, Elias approached the pedestal. The air around the scroll shimmered as though infused with the power of countless souls. He reached out and broke the seal. As he unrolled the ancient parchment, the words began to glow softly in the dim light. They were written in a language that transcended time, yet their meaning resonated with him on a visceral level. The scroll spoke of the eternal conflict between light and darkness, of the intricate dance of sin and redemption. It recounted the tale of a man much like Elias, a soul weighed down by guilt and regret, who had ventured into hell in search of absolution. The narrative was both a warning and a promise, that only by confronting one's inner demons could one hope to transcend the boundaries of mortal existence. Elias read on, feeling each word etch itself into the core of his being. The text described trials by fire and ice, battles against monstrous manifestations of despair, and encounters with spirits both benevolent and damned. It made clear that the path ahead was treacherous and fraught with sacrifice. Yet, interwoven with the darkness was the possibility of salvation, a chance to reclaim what had been lost and to forge a new destiny from the ruins of the past. As he absorbed the scroll's message, Elias felt the overwhelming pull of destiny. The summons was no mere echo of his past. It was a call to action, a mandate to confront every regret, every sin, and every shadow that had haunted him. The guide's presence beside him was a silent reassurance that he was not alone in this journey. The figure's eyes, if one could call them that, seemed to hold an ancient sorrow, a deep understanding of the price of redemption. For what felt like an eternity, Elias stood in the chamber, lost in the swirl of emotions that the scroll had awakened. The words resonated within him, stirring a determination he had never known. He realized that to escape the torment of hell, he would have to journey through its darkest corners and confront the parts of himself that he had long denied. There was no turning back now. The summons was absolute. With a final, resolute breath, Elias rolled up the scroll and tucked it close to his chest. The guide regarded him silently, its presence both enigmatic and reassuring. "Your path has been set," the figure intoned softly. "Now you must choose. Embrace the trials ahead, or succumb to the despair that has long defined you. The choice is yours, Elias. And remember, every step you take in hell brings you closer to the truth, whether it be salvation or eternal damnation." As the echoes of the guide's words faded into the vastness of the chamber, Elias felt a renewed sense of purpose. The summons was not a punishment, but a calling, a challenge to face the deepest recesses of his soul and emerge transformed, whatever the cost. The silent promise of redemption mingled with the threat of ruin, creating a tension that pulsed like a heartbeat in the darkness. Elias stepped away from the pedestal, leaving the ancient scroll behind as a beacon of his newfound resolve. He knew that the journey ahead would test him in ways he could scarcely imagine, but the voice that had summoned him would not be ignored. With every fiber of his being, he vowed to confront the horrors of hell, and in doing so, to seek the redemption that had eluded him in the life he once knew. And so, guided by that enigmatic summons, Elias moved deeper into the labyrinth of torment. The path ahead was shrouded in uncertainty and peril, yet it also held the promise of answers to the questions that had haunted him for so long. With the weight of the past urging him forward and the possibility of a better future flickering like a distant star, he took his first step into the unknown, a step that would forever alter the course of his destiny. The portal. Elias stood at the edge of the labyrinthine corridor, his heart pounding with a mix of dread and anticipation. The words of the guide and the echo of the ancient scroll still resonated in his mind. Every step he had taken up to this moment had led him here, to a threshold unlike any he had ever known. Before him lay a monumental gateway, a portal that shimmered with an otherworldly luminescence, its surface alive with swirling hues of fire and shadow. For a long moment, Elias could only gaze in awe at the sight. The portal was set into a massive stone arch, its surface intricately carved with symbols and images that defied mortal understanding. There was no clear beginning or end to these markings, as if the very stone was a living chronicle of endless torment and sorrow. The gateway pulsed rhythmically, its glow intensifying and receding as though it were breathing. In that pulsation, Elias sensed both a warning and an invitation. He took a tentative step forward, feeling the weight of every regret, every sin, and every shattered dream press upon him. The air around the portal was heavy, charged with an energy that made his skin prickle. It was as if the threshold itself beckoned him to step through, promising both a reckoning and the possibility of transformation. Yet every fiber of his being trembled at the thought of crossing from the known into a realm where even time and space seemed to bend. Elias recalled the guide's solemn words from the chamber. Every soul that enters hell carries a burden. Some are weighed down by regret, others by guilt, and many by the sins of the past. But within him, there lay a spark, an ember of hope amid the overwhelming darkness. Now, standing before this gateway, he wondered if this portal might be the passage to redemption or the final plunge into eternal damnation. Slowly he approached the archway. The closer he got, the more the details of the carvings revealed themselves. Figures of anguished faces and contorted forms seemed to writhe beneath the surface of the stone, their silent screams echoing in the recesses of his mind. Along the edges of the arch, faint lines of light traced out ancient symbols, a language older than time, speaking directly to his soul. The portal vibrated with an intensity that made the very ground tremble beneath his feet. Elias's mind raced with conflicting thoughts. Could this be the gateway to a deeper level of hell, where the ultimate truths of his existence were to be revealed? Or was it merely another trap laid out by the forces that ruled this infernal realm, designed to keep him forever lost in torment? His thoughts were interrupted by the soft, mesmerizing hum that emanated from the portal. The sound was almost musical, drawing him closer as if it were the lullaby of fate itself. He extended a trembling hand toward the glowing surface. As his fingers made contact, a surge of energy shot through him, a cold, electrifying shock that momentarily silenced every thought. In that instant, the world around him seemed to pause, and he felt as if he were suspended between two realities. The portal's surface rippled like water disturbed by a stone, and Elias could swear that he saw fleeting images within the ripple's visions of past lives, memories of pain, and glimpses of a future that might yet be rewritten. A torrent of emotions overwhelmed him. Fear, hope, regret, and determination all battled within his chest. The portal seemed to sense his inner turmoil, its pulsation growing more urgent, more insistent. It was calling him to let go of the past, to surrender to the inevitable transformation that awaited on the other side. Every instinct urged him to retreat, to cling to the remnants of a life filled with familiar pain. Yet a deeper, almost primal voice whispered that this was his only chance, a final opportunity to confront the darkness that had haunted him for so long. Elias drew a deep, steadying breath. He closed his eyes for a moment, summoning every ounce of courage he could muster. In that brief pause, he allowed himself to remember the nights spent alone in his apartment, the endless hours of regret, and the cold despair that had once seemed insurmountable. He remembered the faces of those he had wronged and the weight of every misdeed that had driven him to this moment. And he realized that, whether the portal led to salvation or deeper damnation, he could no longer run from the truth that lay hidden within his soul. With renewed resolve, Elias stepped forward and allowed himself to be drawn into the embrace of the portal. The contact was instantaneous. A rush of energy enveloped him, pulling him forward as though the gateway had reached out to claim its due. For a fleeting second, he felt as if he were being carried on a current of pure will, every cell in his body alight with a fierce, burning determination. In that moment, the pain of his past receded into the background, replaced by a singular focus on the threshold ahead. The sensation of crossing the threshold was both violent and sublime. It felt like plunging into the depths of an ancient ocean, where the surface of reality dissolved into a maelstrom of light, sound, and emotion. The brilliant, chaotic swirl of the portal swallowed him whole, its energies mingling with his own in an overwhelming cascade. As he moved deeper, the familiar world of the corridor and the distant echoes of the chamber faded away, leaving him adrift in a liminal space that defied description. In this strange in-between, Elias experienced a profound disorientation. The laws of nature no longer applied. Time stretched into an eternity, and space twisted into unimaginable shapes. He found himself suspended in an abyss of sensory overload, where every emotion was amplified 1,000-fold. Yet amid the chaos, there was also an undeniable clarity, a realization that this was a place of transformation, where the boundaries between the physical and the metaphysical blurred. As the rush subsided, Elias gradually became aware of his surroundings once more. He was still within the confines of the portal, but now its chaotic energies had begun to organize into discernible patterns. Faint silhouettes emerged from the swirling vortex, and he could make out forms that resembled pathways or corridors leading to different realms. It was as if the portal was not a single, static gateway, but a dynamic network of possibilities, a cosmic crossroads where countless destinies converged. In that moment, Elias understood that the portal represented far more than a mere passage between worlds. It was a living embodiment of choice and consequence, a threshold at which every decision, every regret, and every hope was laid bare. The visions within the portal were not random. They were echoes of every soul that had ever dared to seek redemption in the heart of hell. Each image, each fleeting memory was a reminder that the journey he had embarked upon was part of a vast tapestry of suffering and salvation. The overwhelming intensity of the experience forced Elias to confront his innermost self. He saw in the swirling lights his own face, marked by sorrow and determination, mingled with the ghostly visages of those who had come before him. Their silent, pleading eyes seemed to implore him to find the strength to overcome the darkness that had long defined his existence. And in that moment, he felt a spark of hope, a fragile but persistent belief that perhaps, just perhaps, redemption was possible, even in the depths of hell. Determined to seize this fleeting chance, Elias steadied himself and stepped further into the portal. With each step, the swirling energies began to coalesce, forming a clearer passage ahead. The overwhelming sensations gradually gave way to a sense of purpose. He no longer felt lost in the tumult. Instead, he embraced the uncertainty, allowing the portal to guide him toward a destiny that was both terrifying and transformative. As he progressed, the once chaotic vortex began to take on a more defined structure. The edges of the passage shimmered with a soft, ethereal glow, and the path ahead unfolded like a corridor carved from pure light and shadow. The transition was not sudden, but rather a gradual evolution, a metamorphosis of the very essence of the infernal realm. Elias sensed that he was moving toward a place of profound significance, a domain where the secrets of hell would be laid bare, and the true nature of his torment, and perhaps his salvation, would finally be revealed. Every step along the way was accompanied by a chorus of whispered voices, echoes of past souls, remnants of long-forgotten stories, and fragments of the cosmic memory of this infernal place. These voices did not speak in words, but in feelings, evoking emotions of sorrow, hope, and defiance. They were the voices of those who had once dared to dream of redemption, and the echoes of those who had succumbed to despair. In their collective murmur, Elias found both comfort and a solemn reminder of the cost of his journey. At last, as the swirling energies began to subside, Elias emerged from the heart of the portal into a realm that was at once familiar and alien. The passage gave way to a vast, open expanse, a new domain within hell, more mysterious and foreboding than anything he had encountered before. Behind him, the portal closed slowly, its luminescence fading into a soft afterglow, as if it had fulfilled its purpose and receded into the annals of time. Standing at the threshold of this new world, Elias felt the full weight of his choice. He had crossed a barrier that few had dared to approach, and now he was left with the stark realization that the journey ahead would test him in ways he could scarcely imagine. Yet within that moment of uncertainty, there was also a fierce, undeniable determination, a resolve to face whatever darkness lay ahead and to seek the redemption that had eluded him for so long. With a final glance toward the fading light of the portal, Elias took a deep breath and stepped forward into the unknown. Every step carried the echoes of countless souls and the silent promise of transformation. The portal had been both a barrier and a beacon, a threshold that bridged the gap between the familiar pain of his past and the unfathomable possibilities of his future. And as he ventured deeper into the heart of this new realm, Elias knew that his journey had only just begun, a journey that would force him to confront the very essence of hell itself. Shadows of the damned. Elias stood at the threshold of a new domain, where the boundary between the physical and the metaphysical had completely dissolved. The realm he had entered pulsed with the tortured energies of countless souls. The air was thick with sorrow and regret, and every shadow seemed to whisper secrets of eternal torment. It was as if the darkness itself was alive, its lifeblood the pain of the damned. The ground beneath his feet was uneven and scorched, marked by deep fissures that crisscrossed the barren landscape. Flickering embers rose from these cracks, carried by a slow, mournful wind that echoed with the lamentations of the lost. Elias felt as though unseen eyes were watching him from every direction. Shadows stretched across the terrain, merging and separating in an eerie, unending dance that filled him with an overwhelming sense of isolation and despair. As he advanced, Elias began to notice figures emerging from the gloom. These were not ordinary apparitions, but the tortured souls of those condemned to this infernal realm. They appeared as vague silhouettes, their forms distorted by the relentless agony that had become their existence. Their eyes, if they could be called that, glowed with the dim light reflections of centuries of suffering and hopelessness. Some moved slowly across the ground as if burdened by an invisible weight, while others hovered motionless, their faces etched with silent screams. Elias's heart pounded as he approached one such figure, a gaunt, emaciated soul that appeared trapped in a loop of endless torment. Its form was barely human. The edges of its body dissolved into tendrils of shadow that reached out like desperate hands. When their eyes met, Elias felt an instant connection, as if the spirit recognized him. The figure's lips moved silently, and for a brief moment, Elias believed he heard a plea, a cry for forgiveness, or perhaps a warning of the fate that awaited him. But before he could focus further, the spirit drifted away, merging with the darkness once more. The landscape was a maze of contradictions. At times, Elias found himself in pockets of relative calm, where the oppressive noise of agony subsided into a heavy, lingering silence. In these moments, the weight of the shadows felt almost tangible, pressing upon him like a shroud. At other times, the tormented souls surged forth in a frenzied display of despair, their collective sorrow creating a cacophony of moans and whispers that shook the very foundations of this desolate place. More. In one particularly bleak section of the realm, Elias encountered a group of souls gathered around a crumbling monument. The monument, once a grand statue now reduced to rubble, was inscribed with the words that had faded into obscurity. Yet the sentiment was unmistakable, a lament for a lost era of hope and redemption. The souls circled the monument in slow, deliberate motions, as if mourning for something they could no longer remember. Elias stood at the edge of this gathering, feeling the depth of their collective grief. The silence that enveloped them was profound, broken only by the occasional, heart-wrenching cry of a soul overwhelmed by its own sorrow. As Elias moved further into the realm, the boundaries between memory and reality began to blur. Shadows took on more vivid forms, and he started to see fleeting images of the past. There were visions of people long gone, their faces contorted in agony, as they relived their most painful moments over and over again. In one such vision, Elias saw a young woman in a tattered dress, her eyes filled with tears that glowed with an ethereal light. She reached out to him, her hand trembling in silent supplication, then vanished into the swirling darkness as quickly as she had appeared. The relentless onslaught of these spectral visions disoriented Elias. He could no longer trust his own eyes, unsure whether what he saw was a true reflection of the damned souls or a manifestation of his own inner fears. The whispers grew louder, each carrying fragments of long-forgotten stories, tales of betrayal, loss, and the unbearable burden of regret. They recounted lives once filled with promise, only to be shattered by choices made in the face of despair. Each story was a piece of a larger puzzle, a mosaic of human frailty entwined with the inexorable pull of damnation. In the midst of this spectral tumult, Elias came upon a narrow, winding path that seemed less consumed by the chaotic energy surrounding him. This path, lined with the faint remnants of broken chains and shattered relics, offered a semblance of direction. The ground here bore deep impressions, footprints left by souls long forgotten. With cautious determination, Elias followed these imprints, each step carrying him deeper into the heart of the realm where the shadows held the most potent secrets. The path led him to a cavernous space where darkness was punctuated by strange, luminescent symbols etched into the walls. These symbols pulsed with a soft, rhythmic glow, casting eerie reflections on the cavern floor. The air here was cool, a stark contrast to the oppressive heat of the outer expanse, and carried a scent that was both ancient and otherworldly, a mixture of burned wood and damp earth. In the center of the cavern stood a large crystalline structure that emitted a faint, sorrowful hum. Elias approached it cautiously, sensing that this structure was key to understanding the tapestry of despair woven throughout this realm. Drawing nearer, the crystalline structure began to resonate with his presence. Its hum grew into a melancholic melody that seemed to echo the very beat of his heart. The light emanating from it danced upon the walls, creating intricate patterns that silently told stories of love, loss, and the eternal struggle for redemption. Elias felt a deep connection with the structure, as if it were a repository of the collective memories of all those who had ever suffered here. In that moment, he understood that the shadows were not mere agents of torment. They were keepers of history, guardians of the forgotten narratives of every soul that had passed through hell. Lost in contemplation, Elias did not notice a figure approaching silently from behind. This spirit was different from the others, a presence exuding quiet resignation and deep wisdom. Its form was more defined, and its features bore the marks of sorrow that spanned millennia. Its eyes, though lifeless, shone with a gentle light, as if reflecting a long-forgotten kindness. The spirit regarded Elias with a calm expression, as if it had been expecting him all along. "You carry a heavy burden, traveler," the spirit said softly, its voice echoing like distant bells in the cavern. "The shadows of the damned cling to you not only because of your sins, but because of the unspoken grief of a lifetime. Here in this realm, every soul is a mirror of pain, and every shadow is a story waiting to be told." Elias found himself captivated by the spirit's words. In its measured tone, he heard echoes of a truth that resonated deeply within him, a truth that acknowledged the complexity of human suffering and the inevitability of regret. "I have been drawn here by my own guilt," Elias admitted, his voice trembling with both fear and longing. I must face the demons of my past, no matter how unbearable they may be. The spirit nodded slowly, its expression filled with profound empathy. Then you have taken the first step toward understanding. The shadows you see are not mere apparitions. They are the souls of those who came before you, each bound by their own stories of despair. To move forward, listen to their silent cries and let their memories guide you. Only by embracing the full measure of your own pain can you hope to break free from the chains of damnation. With these words, the spirit began to fade, its form dissolving into the ambient darkness until it was nothing more than a whisper of memory. Yet its presence lingered like a gentle reminder that even in the heart of hell, wisdom could be found within the echoes of the damned. Elias continued along the path, his mind alight with the Spirit's message. Each step became imbued with a renewed sense of purpose, a determination not only to confront the external horrors of this realm, but also to face the internal demons that had plagued him for so long. The landscape, once an overwhelming sea of despair, slowly revealed patterns, silent stories etched into the fabric of the shadows. He saw fleeting images of faces, heard echoes of voices, and felt the collective sorrow of countless souls. This tapestry of misery, interwoven with threads of hope and the possibility of transformation, began to shape his journey forward. In the distance, a faint glimmer of light emerged, nearly imperceptible against the all-consuming darkness. It beckoned him onward, promising that beyond the shadows lay a path toward clarity, and perhaps even salvation. Though the weight of the damned pressed heavily upon him, Elias knew there was no turning back. Every step carried him deeper into a realm where the lines between sin and atonement blurred, where each shadow served as a reminder of what had been lost and what might yet be reclaimed. As the chorus of tormented souls gradually softened to a muted hum, Elias paused to gather his thoughts. He found a small alcove along the winding path, a brief haven where the oppressive noise subsided into a reflective silence. In this secluded space, the air was cool and calm, offering respite from the relentless tide of despair. The alcove was simple, a stone bench worn smooth by the passage of countless souls seeking solace in the midst of endless torment. Elias sat down and closed his eyes, allowing the heavy emotions to settle within him. In that quiet moment, the myriad whispers of the damned converged into a single, coherent message, a murmur of shared grief and muted hope. It was a reminder that even in the darkest depths of hell, every soul carried within it the capacity for both suffering and redemption. Tears welled in Elias's eyes, born not only of the overwhelming pain he had witnessed, but also of the recognition of his own vulnerability. Stripped of all pretenses, he was no longer a man fleeing his past. He was a soul exposed to the truth of his own mortality. Rising from the bench with renewed determination, Elias resumed his journey along the corridor lined with ancient stone pillars. Each pillar bore cryptic symbols, silent testament to the agony and occasional glimmers of salvation that had defined this realm. The corridor itself seemed to pulse with a life of its own, a gallery of the damned, chronicling every soul that had dared to confront its inner darkness. At the corridor's end, Elias discovered another narrow passage that led him to an even deeper part of the realm. The path was lined with the shattered remnants of relics and broken chains, tangible symbols of the sorrow and regret that had bound so many before him. Despite the ever-present despair, Elias felt an ember of hope growing within him, a fragile light that dared to challenge the overwhelming darkness. Every step forward was a silent pledge to confront Not only the external terrors of this forsaken realm, but also the internal ghosts that had haunted him for years. The shadows that lined the path were no longer just a manifestation of torment. They were witnesses to the inexorable cycle of pain and the potential for change. Each whisper, each fleeting image, was a story that begged to be heard, understood, and ultimately forgiven. With the faint glimmer of light still visible in the distance, Elias pressed on. The path wound deeper into the heart of the realm, where the tortured memories of the damned mingled with the possibility of transformation. Every footfall echoed with the silent promise that the journey, however harrowing, was a necessary step toward understanding the true nature of redemption. As the corridor opened into a vast, shadowed chamber, Elias felt the full weight of what he had witnessed and what lay ahead. In this chamber, the darkness was thick, yet within it, the souls of the damned maintained their eternal vigil. Their presence was overwhelming, a ceaseless reminder that even in the depths of hell, every soul had a story, every shadow a truth. And as Elias stepped into this chamber of silent testimonies, he vowed to listen, to remember, and to allow the voices of the damned to guide him on his journey toward whatever fate awaited him beyond the sorrowful veil of these shadows. The crucible of fate. Elias trudged onward, the heavy echoes of the damned and the soft murmur of ancient sorrow mingling in the stagnant air. The winding corridor of suffering finally opened into a vast, almost cathedral-like chamber, a space that seemed both sacred and profane. Here the very walls were alive with scars of centuries, bearing carvings of agony and redemption intertwined in a silent testimony to the fate of countless souls. In the center of the chamber, a grand dais rose from the ground. Upon it lay a battered, iron-bound tome, its pages yellowed by time and seared by the flames of perdition. Elias felt an inexplicable pull toward the ancient volume. Every step he had taken from the dizzying depths of the abyss to the spectral gatherings in the labyrinth of lost souls had led him here. Now, as he stood before the dais, the weight of his own guilt and hope pressed down upon him like a physical force. The air was thick with anticipation and an almost tangible sense of destiny. Elias approached the dais slowly, his heart hammering in his chest. He knew that the tome held the key to understanding not only the nature of this infernal realm, but also the path that lay ahead for his own soul. With trembling fingers, he reached out and touched the cold, iron-bound cover. In that moment, a surge of energy rushed through him, a rush that seemed to erase the boundary between past and present, hope and despair. As he opened the tome, the chamber's dim light caught on the faded ink and cryptic symbols that danced across the pages. The text, written in an archaic tongue that nevertheless resonated within him, recounted the eternal struggle between sin and redemption. It told of souls who had ventured into the heart of hell seeking absolution, only to find that the journey was a crucible, a trial by which the true nature of one's spirit was revealed. Elias's eyes scanned the ancient words, and with each line he read, he felt as though the dam of his repressed memories was breaking. Visions of his past, of choices made in desperate moments, of failures and betrayals flooded his mind. The weight of these memories was unbearable, yet in their midst, he detected a glimmer of understanding. The text offered no simple salvation, only the promise that facing the truth of one's own darkness was the only way to transcend it. A sudden low hum filled the chamber, and the dais began to glow with an otherworldly light. The spectral forms of tormented souls swirled around him, their voices a mournful chorus that ebbed and flowed like a tide of regret. Among these voices, one rose above the rest, a soft, yet resolute tone that seemed to call his name. Elias, echoing through the vast emptiness. Your reckoning is at hand. At that moment, the ground trembled beneath his feet. Cracks spread like veins across the stone floor, and a searing heat surged from the depths below. The chamber shuddered, as if the very structure of hell were preparing to unveil its final truth. Elias clutched the tome tightly, his knuckles white, as he struggled to maintain his composure amid the overwhelming power of the infernal forces gathering around him. Within the tumult, the spectral figures coalesced into a single, imposing silhouette, a towering presence draped in tattered robes, its eyes burning with a ferocious, otherworldly light. The figure raised its hand slowly, and the voices of the damned fell silent. For a long, agonizing moment, there was only the sound of Elias's heartbeat and the distant roar of an unseen tempest. Your sins have brought you to this crucible, the figure intoned, its voice resonating with both authority and sorrow. You stand on the threshold of your destiny. Here, in this moment of trial, you must choose. Surrender to the torment that has defined your past, or rise from the ashes of despair and claim the redemption that lies hidden within your soul. Elias felt the full force of those words, as if they were etched into his very being. Every regret, every misstep, every ounce of despair that had haunted him now converged upon this moment of choice. The figure's gaze was unyielding, as though it could see the very depths of his soul and the secrets he had long tried to hide. The silence that followed was profound. Elias's mind reeled with the enormity of his decision. Could he truly confront the darkness that had defined his existence? Was it possible, even in the depths of hell, to find a path to redemption? The questions tormented him, their answers obscured by the swirling mists of memory and anguish. After what felt like an eternity, the figure slowly lowered its hand. The oppressive heat subsided, and the chamber's glow softened into a gentle radiance. This part of your journey has reached its end, the figure declared. But know this, Elias, hell is not a destination. It is a crucible in which every soul is tested. Your path continues beyond this threshold, where the choices you make will shape not only your fate, but the fate of all that you hold dear. As the imposing presence faded into the ambient light, Elias stood alone before the dais. The tome remained open in his hands, its ancient words still shimmering with a faint glow. Though the chamber was now quiet, the echoes of the past and the promise of what lay ahead continued to resonate within him. In that final, transformative moment, Elias understood that the crucible he had endured was only the beginning of a far greater trial. The journey through hell had forced him to confront the darkest corners of his soul, and now he was left with the knowledge that the battle for his salvation was far from over. The figure's parting words were a solemn reminder that every end is but a doorway to a new beginning, a truth that carried with it both hope and an inevitable sorrow. As Elias turned to leave the chamber, the images of tormented souls and ancient sorrow lingered in his mind like a fading echo. The passage before him was shrouded in an uncertain darkness, yet within it, a glimmer of light beckoned a promise that the path forward, however perilous, might lead to a form of redemption. He knew that his journey would continue into realms even more unforgiving, where the stakes were higher and the cost of every choice immeasurable. With the tome safely tucked beneath his arm and the memory of the spectral guide imprinted on his heart, Elias stepped away from the dais and toward the exit of the chamber. The corridor behind him closed slowly, as if sealing the chapter of his past, while the path ahead opened into an expanse of swirling shadows and tentative light. For a brief moment he paused and looked back. The chamber of the crucible filled with echoes of suffering and whispers of hope, was receding into the darkness, leaving him with a sense of both finality and anticipation. He realized that the journey through hell was not merely a descent into despair, but a pilgrimage toward an elusive, hard-won redemption. As he walked on, a single, chilling thought accompanied him. The promise of salvation was always tempered by the specter of damnation. The choice was his, and his alone. With each step, the weight of his past mingled with the fragile hope of a future yet unwritten. And so, as the distant sounds of the infernal realm faded into silence behind him, Elias disappeared into the enveloping darkness. His figure grew smaller, swallowed by the endless corridor that led deeper into the mysteries of hell. The finality of his decision hung in the air, a temporary closure, a necessary pause before the true odyssey began. To be continued.